Welcome back to the WSU Democrats podcast. I'm Ethan Bishop. I'm the president of the organization.
And I'm Stela Hoyal, and I'm here because it's fun.
Oh, yeah. This is the funnest thing to do on a Friday night. So I kind of wanted to just start this off organically. Did you have anything that you were kind of thinking about politically or socially, I guess, like I said recently?
The only thing that's come up to my mind is just that Congresswoman using the T slur in Congress, which, I mean, one, it's a slur, but my biggest issue with it is just how unparliamentary and unprofessional it was. Yeah. At the very least, can our politicians try to be professional?
I haven't even actually seen that video, but that's crazy. Do you know which Congresswoman it was? Was it Nancy Mace?
It might have been her. I can't remember.
That sounds like something she would do, honestly. Yeah, that's crazy. Just blatant, transphobia, just blatant discrimination and bigotry. Mm-hmm. And I think Republicans have been emboldened by the election results. Well, obviously, because why else would freaking Elon be doing that? Like, it's like insane. And then I think that's also one of the benefits, though, is that now they're all acting a fool and all that, and they think it's not going to come back to bite them. But really, and David Pakman actually put this a really good way, is that right now, yeah, a decent amount of people might approve of Trump, just like how when Biden first got elected, a lot of people approved of him. But as time goes on and they start seeing things they don't like that a president does or a whole administration or party, that's all going to start dwindling away, because arguably the seeds for what we saw in 2024 was what happened in August of 2021 when they had the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, mm-hmm. where we left a bunch of equipment, like some service members even died because some like ISIS members got out of a prison like in the nearby area and all this kind of crazy, stuff. And that actually laid the seeds, because then a lot of people started disapproving of Biden. And then it just spiraled from there. So very early in a presidency, the things that happen and the rhetoric that gets spread out there, it matters and it accumulates. So I hope that's something we can all keep in mind going forward, is that, as much as it sucks that Trump's going to be in there for 4 years, there's going to be a time after that. And what happens during these 4 years will absolutely determine things that happen going forward. I just think that's a very interesting point to kind of go at. How would you say, do you have any tips for if someone was like, hey, I feel really hopeless that Trump's in office, I don't want to get into politics for that, or something like that?
I don't know. I feel very hopeless and everything, but my biggest thing is just everyone has a community, whether it's your best friend or your parents or whatever. You have somebody who is going to be there for you. So just kind of focus your time on building your community, because that's kind of the best thing, because the whole community it's going to be a lot harder to rip out a whole community than just one person one by one.
Yes, exactly. And this is why I found it so astounding that the transphobia, as much as it did, actually worked, like as far as people voting for Republicans because of all the anti-trans propaganda, literally basically saying that trans people, or at least a decent amount of them, are using the fact that they're trans as an excuse to go into the wrong bathroom and sexually assault people. And it's like, don't people have like someone in their life who is trans, or they might even have someone in their life that's trans and they don't even know they're trans because they're passing. And it's like, there's been multiple cases in my life where there was someone who I didn't even know was trans, but because of how well they presented. And it's like, it's not that they should even have to do that, but you'd think like conservatives, they have gay daughters, gay sons, trans daughters, trans sons, like, and non-binary and all that. It's like, how could they actually vote for someone who is antithetical to everything they're supposed to love? Although a lot of the times they do, what's the word? They get estranged from their liberal, because they naturally become liberal if they are in some kind of marginalized community because they see the Republicans going after them. And it's like, how did that work? How did they so successfully demonize a community, which is literally embedded even in these conservative communities? And honestly, the sad part is, I think it would have to get worse before they start caring about trans people, even, migrants, non-conservative women. It's like they're going to have to actually see members from those communities who they personally care about get hurt in order for them to stop, in my opinion. Unless it's all about the economy, and if the economy keeps sucking, then they're going to be like, nah, fuck Trump and the Republicans. Like, one or the other, bro. Like, something's got to give. It's insane.
Economy has not been fixed at all.
Exactly.
It's only getting worse.
The Ukraine-Russia war has not ended.
Nope.
I know with the whole Palestine-Israel, there's some kind of deal going on now. That's like, but that was kind of annoying how that happened kind of in correspondence. Then they're going to be like, oh, yeah, like, you think there's someone?
Yeah, we got to knock at the door.
Actually, I was just talking about how we could actually get through this with Trump being in power, and I was kind of talking about how it's actually quite interesting how in presidential administrations, even what happens like in the first year, I'd say, lays the groundwork for the next election turning out a certain way, and that's actually something good. And some silver lining is that everything with, Trump, with him trying to deport like so many migrants, I think about half of them, or if not more than half. Yeah, it was more than half last I checked. Literally didn't commit any crime besides coming into this country illegally. Yeah. So literally just rounding up a bunch of people and non-migrants they want to deport, and people who call this country home. And it's like, when you think about it, in 2021, you know how there's Biden's kind of disastrous pullout from Afghanistan?
Yeah.
That is when a lot of people started disapproving of Biden. And that, just in that first year, that's when it kind of started. So with Trump, we should not underestimate the power we have in 2025 in order to create a blue wave year in 2026 and 2028. And we're just trying to talk about ways to cope and get through this.
And I can't imagine a lot of Republicans or libertarians are happy with Doge. The Department of overtaking government efficiently.
Real.
Exactly.
With how that's all been going, that's been giving me a lot of stress. And then there's stuff that isn't really even talked about so much on the news. Like, if you've seen trans people have started to get passports denied. They aren't sending them out to people who identify as trans. And there's also like a lynching that occurred that is kind of being swept under the rug.
Yeah, I haven't even heard about that.
It's kind of all scary.
Well, and that's also the scary thing. I think I said this last time, is like with him pardoning the January 6th insurrectionists, like in it of itself, it's bad. But think about the message it sends, that maybe you could actually lynch someone and get pardoned for it. Maybe you could commit all these other hate crimes, because that's basically what the January 6th insurrectionists did. They broke in there, battered police officers, literally put several in the hospital. Several even killed themselves like directly after that.
Yeah.
And it's like, so if they can do that and get pardoned, like, even if they're not going to get pardoned, like for some crazy thing, it's like they might, in their psychotic state, think they might be because of what Trump did.
Yeah. He sent out a direct message to white supremacist groups, and definitely gave them a lot of confidence, as he's been doing his entire time as a political figure.
Yeah, it's insane. But, I mean, I guess that's more of just what I'm talking about, more ammo to use to just kind of batter them with it. And I think we just have to really tap into the whole media ecosystem. That's why I want to do my podcast each week, is because we need to aggressively hammer in progressive ideology. And, it's hard because sometimes you might think, oh, well, we don't have the majority in the House and Senate. We obviously don't have the presidency. It's like, what power do we have in just our rhetoric? And honestly, we have so much more power than we even think. Like, and this is something I try to tell people, it's like, would you rather be a state representative? Let's say you're a Democratic state representative here in Utah and in the super minority. Think of how much you could do as that versus a huge political commentator who hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people tune into. It's like, you have so much more influence and power over and to make this country better than otherwise. That's not to say people shouldn't, but that just goes to show, like, think about how much power Tucker Carlson has of the right. Think about how much power David Pakman, or even
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, Ben Shapiro. It's like, and people on the liberal side too. It's like, so I think that's why it's so important.
Do we have a few on the liberal side? I mean, that's the problem, really, is that there's not like I can't think of one that comes to mind, like an outstanding, like direct.
And I mean, they're less it's definitely less popular. And this is what I found because I was on YouTube for a long time. Even before the 2024 election, when Biden was still in there, I was worried about Trump getting back in office. So I was like, you know what? Biden, he actually does have some good speeches, like a State of the Unions or some other ones. And I would literally take clips from it, like when he's saying something I really liked, I'd post it. And they would show it to thousands of people, and they would show it to disproportionately people who would lean conservative, like older men. Literally, my analytics, it was like there's a bunch who's like 65 plus, like upwards of 30, almost all of them. And it's like they literally show the liberal content to the conservatives, and then the conservatives don't like it, so they swipe away from it, so then it doesn't get pushed out into the algorithm. I don't know if this is like purposeful, but the liberal commentators and all that, they get way less views, and I think that might be wise because they're showing it to conservatives, or just because on YouTube Shorts, like there are way more conservatives tuning in.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, like I know several liberal commentators, like David Packman, Destiny. There's some weird allegations against him that, so I'm not gonna.
I
fully
know about
endorse
that.
him.
Hassanabi.
Yeah, Hassan. Like, but honestly, Hassan doesn't. Did he even support Kamala? Like, I don't even think he did. Like,
I don't know if he did directly because of the stuff going on in Palestine, which makes sense for him.
Yeah.
But he is a big left wing moderate or commentator.
well, and that's the thing that kills me is like he didn't endorse Harris, or he even advocated against that. I don't fully know what he did, or if he was
I
just.
didn't know.
If he was like milquetoast on it, like I guess you can. It's like because the most far right people almost always like Nick Fuentes. I think Nick Fuentes endorsed Trump, and well, even if he didn't, like a ton of others, like Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
It's like the far right all the way to the center right, which also is news because before Kamala was like, oh yeah, we can appeal to these moderate white Republicans and people who don't like Trump, and it's like, no, she got barely any more. I think she got like 6% of Republicans. Guess how many Democrats Trump got? 4%. So we did 2% better than they did among the other fucking party. And it's like for everything they did where they were saying they were going to get Republicans and all that.
They shouldn't have been doing that. They should have
Yeah.
leaned more progressive and stopped like signaling to the conservative space who don't agree with them anyways and aren't
Exactly.
going to have their minds changed. Have you tried talking to one of them?
Exactly. And
It's
then,
a brick wall.
Yeah. And then the hard thing is when people like Hassan don't endorse Kamala Harris, when you have the entire spectrum of the right wing endorsing Trump, when in America the right is already way, or the whole political spectrum actually, is way further to the right than it should be. And then they're all supporting the super right wing candidate who literally said he wants to terminate the Constitution. It's like, and then we see all these terrible things with tariffs and all that. But I kind of wanted to get you guys' thoughts on this. So we talked about this a little bit last time, but now it's official as far as the legislature goes. Utah legislature bans public sector jobs from unionizing. Labor unions that serve teachers, firefighters, police, and other public employees in Utah will no longer be able to negotiate on behalf of their workers under a bill that received final legislative approval Thursday. The Republican policy banning collective bargaining for all public sector professionals passed the Senate in a 16-13 vote after its sponsors abandoned a proposed compromise that would have removed the outright ban. Come on, I have missed my spot. After days of negotiation, some unions still disapproved, leading lawmakers to move forward with the more restrictive original version that had already passed the House. So they said they were going to rewrite it. I think that's what Senator Ann Milner, our senator, that's what she said. But
And there was one of the senators, I can't remember from the article I read, but one of them said prior to this that they were like, well, we didn't really get the response that we were hoping for the 50% compromise BS that they tried to pull. So we might just do the other thing if you guys can't agree.
I think that actually was this.
And that's what happened. And it's just like, you're basically threatening them into this ultimatum. My mom was at the Capitol earlier today, protesting. She sent me some photos and things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think what you were talking about, because I had a quote here that I included. It's from AP News, by the way. Senator Kirk Cullimore, if there's not going to be consensus, then let's just run it on its face.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's how you do politics.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't agree
That's
with
going to
this
be happy with
legislation,
your
so-
constituents. They're not happy with your compromise. So what do you think they're going to do with the one that they hated before?
Exactly.
It's not a good idea.
Because it's like, if you were going to do that, if you were just going to do it either way, why didn't you just pass? Like, it's terrible, but then when you're kind of dangling the carrot, it's like, well, we will negotiate with you if we get what we want, but if we don't, we're just going to do the entire like restrictive version, literally banning fucking police officers from unionizing and getting a better wage. They're literally against police officers being paid more, teachers being paid more, firefighters being paid more, and then they're somehow appealing to these white working class people, or I guess, well, uneducated people more so than educated. Obviously, that's kind of the divide. Whereas, well, actually, no, because a lot of firefighters do go to the...
I wouldn't go as far as say that. I would say that they do try to appeal to the working class.
Yeah.
But it's not... They try to trick the working class is what I think.
And they do it successfully. And they get them to care about all these transgender culture war, like abortion culture war, where they're saying that babies are being killed in the 9th month or whatever. Like, all this random bullshit they just throw at the wall to see what sticks.
Things that don't matter as much as our economy.
Exactly.
And, just something to distract, and that's what they're good at, is just distracting people and getting them upset.
That's interesting that you say that, because that actually brings up a question I'd like for us to kind of ponder is, if it is about the economy and they actually typically do better on the economy than Democrats, like not objectively, but as far as what voters think, they typically have the advantage. But it's like, if that's the case, why did they then rely on so much anti-trans rhetoric, a bunch of just random conspiratorial nonsense rhetoric, anti-vaccine rhetoric, like all this sort of stuff? If they are winning on the economy, why do they need to use the anti-trans propaganda? Maybe it's because they know if they were actually truthful about the economy, it would benefit Democrats, because Democratic presidents have typically overseen better economies. And it's just true, like the actual facts about it, like what caused inflation, like the supply chain issues, like all this complicated stuff. A conservative is never going to admit to all that. They're just going to say it's Biden's fault and then Trump got in.
Well,
it's like,
you kind of look back on history, like in the 1600s, 1700s, just the way the economy worked back then was more of like a mercantile kind of, not really capitalist, and it was like, it's kind of the same concept where it's like, well, you want your country to be doing better than everyone else, right? You got to keep the money in your country, and if you're only like if you're keeping the money in your country the whole time, that's not going to do anything. So you got to like buy outside sources stuff, but then also through that, people are like, oh, well, this is better, and then you're going to start losing money again, because no one still has ever understood how economics works. And it's just this really weird thing to just think about. It's like, well, if we throw all this random garbage left and right to kind of get people to keep money kind of where we want it, then we can create and fix problems. And
that's a good point.
It's just weird.
It's honestly, part of it's just a tool from the ultra rich. They want us to have all these transgender culture wars, because then we're not talking about the wealth gap and everything that actually challenges their hold on power.
I also think that, the gender stuff is easily controversial. So it's going to be more divisive against people. So that's an easy way to distract people, is what is something that people argue a lot about. Like, they do the same thing with abortion. They do the same thing with equal pay and all of that. It's anything that they can like try and be like, oh, hey, it's you against them. And that's what they try to do to get us to.
And that's the whole,
for our fears,
like anti-trans and all the whole like, oh, is there more than two genders? It's like, they literally, and the border, frankly, for that matter, they just bring up all these kind of buzzwords and things that can kind of make people get excited, like excited in a weird way. Like, they get excited about being right in a weird way, where they think like, oh yeah, like that's so cool how Ben Shapiro or freaking, what's the other guy's name? There's Michael Knowles, and then whoever Steven Crowder. It's like, oh yeah, they bodied the liberals. Like, oh yeah, that's so cool. It's like, in a way, it's like, I try to think of it like it's like political junk food. Like, they think they're getting educated, but it's literally all just far-right propaganda. And it makes them feel good to see. And that, Jordan honestly, Peterson, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, like all of that, literally basically far-right, like brain junk food that they use to then continually be in this cycle and to continually delude themselves like they're on the right side of history and that we shouldn't be fucking taxing the rich because they're always against that and they're always for more tax cuts. That's what Trump wanted. I haven't been following him like a hawk lately, but during the campaign, he was saying he wanted a $5 trillion tax cut when before it was about what, like 2-3 trillion in his first term. Now he wants a $5 trillion one. Going to increase the wealth gap even more. And what do you expect when you have Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, which I think might have even borne out his welcome. I saw some thing about him fighting with Trump or something. But,
oh, did he?
Yeah, I heard that they don't really like him anymore and he's going to like leave.
Oh, yeah, that's typical. That's just what happens.
But he was the one who was literally on there talking about Americans, justifying why he wants to bring over people from like India and maybe even China. I can't remember exactly.
But that they're better educated than us.
Yeah, and
whose fault is that? Isn't
Exactly.
that your job to fix? And you're supposed to be paying for our better education?
It's like, yeah, and it's funny because it's like for all the things that I think it's fine. It's obviously fine for immigrants to come over and do things that because they want to do things that statistically or they're willing that Americans won't do. It's like higher up jobs like that. I honestly think I might be a little bit upset if I studied and did all this to get a very prestigious job and then they like outsourced it. But it's like, I think that'd be a lot more reasonable than them being like, oh, yeah, the immigrants are taking our jobs when they're like construction workers and plumbers and gardeners and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, doesn't it make more sense to have actual Americans fulfill these top, very, very skilled jobs? It's like, I'm not necessarily even saying I'm against immigrants coming over to do that, but it makes more sense than being like, oh, yeah, these Mexican immigrants. It's like they need to just get out of our country. It's like, you see what I'm saying? Like,
Isn't it kind of funny that they're the ones saying that immigrants are taking Americans' jobs when that guy was literally suggesting hiring immigrants for jobs in America, like high level jobs. And I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I do think it's a problem when you blame it on our education system and you do nothing to fix it. I think that's just a really bad excuse and just overall not a great look.
Yeah, with education, it's a really interesting thing because the Department of Education is not actually that old. It's like less than 60 or 70 years old.
Really?
It's relatively new. Like, if you look at movies from like the 80s, they're like portraying like the 60s and 50s. A lot of them will have like one character who has a sibling that kind of like lives in the basement, who's maybe got some like mental illness or physical disability or whatever, and just kind of just isn't stereotypically normal and kind of can't get through.
Has albinism or something.
Exactly, can't get through like schooling or whatever typically. And then the Department of Education comes around in like the 70s, late 70s, kind of fixes that. And now those aren't in movies anymore. And everyone is given the opportunity to go through school to what best like teaches them. And then we get this, and then I don't know, I'd argue, since I have no statistics to prove this, but I could argue since like the 80s, the amount of just like people with schizophrenia, ADHD, XYZ, whatever, have like been able to go through and create groundbreaking like technological revolutions and stuff like that. It's just so interesting to see how you argue, Department of Education is like too lenient and letting dumb people in or whatever. It's like, no, it's giving everyone the equal opportunity. And by trying to fight this equal opportunity and fight against DEI, you're just kind of making it so it's going back to how it was in the 50s, which honestly, the 50s wasn't very prosperous.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And that actually makes me think of like how education, in some ways, it evens the scores out and you're not like seeing people who do have certain disabilities like that fall by the wayside. That's why education had been such a big issue. But I think there's also something to that, which I'm trying to think of like back around like Cold War era, everything there basically blended into the whole anti-gay rhetoric, anti-trans, because they thought that if a man especially was gay, but women too.
Oh, the
like,
AIDS thing?
Or no, that was a little bit later, I think. But
I think that was Cold War era, was it not?
It was the end of the Cold War with
the
women.
end of it.
Yeah.
But I was thinking more so how they think that if you're gay or you're a sissy boy or your mom hung out with you too much, it's like you're then weak-minded and you're more susceptible to Russian communism propaganda. And that's and that was the same with what was his name? McCarthy. That's the McCarthyism of just declaring that these Democrats and just people in general are like communist spies when it's super overblown. That was the Red Scare, and it's like that is kind of similar to what we're seeing now with the anti-trans stuff, because they think the trans people are going to fall for the woke mind or they're already woke if they're trans.
I mean, like they still do the communist stuff.
Yeah,
on top of
that
everything
too.
else.
But I think it's
like,
just kind of interesting the difference between then and today. Then it was an us versus them narrative with gay people, sissy boys, women who spend too much time around their sons and daughters sometimes, versus everyone else who was the more like the consensus culture. And now it's just kind of consensus culture again in a weird way, but against transgender people, against migrants, against non-conservative women, I'd even argue.
Yeah.
They have no issue.
Oh, and gay people too. I'm sure they're gonna try and repeal gay marriage.
Idaho's already starting to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Freaking Idaho.
Idaho's doing everything.
Yeah.
I read something very startling about Idaho. I can't remember what it was. I just read something and I was like, okay, I don't live in Idaho. Thank God.
All I know, I don't think that they actually did this successfully. Like, it's so dumb, but they were like, oh, yeah, you can't travel across state lines to get an abortion. And it's like they were trying to do that on the state level. It's like that's literally interstate commerce. That's like the definition of what makes something federal is you're going across state lines. And they're saying you can't use the roads in our fucking state to drive over to what? I need to look at the map again. But exactly.
How would they know?
Well, they could, I guess, look at
the only way they know would be illegal.
I mean, they could probably see them on some public highways and on different stuff and see which car is theirs, get the plate number, have cops searching for them. Like, they could do a lot of crazy stuff if they wanted to.
But how would they know that they get an abortion? Like, they'd what, follow every car out of Idaho?
Well, that's the
That would waste
pregnancy.
so much money. So much money would be wasted.
That's why they were afraid, and this is actually talked about in Project 2025, a national pregnancy database where they actually know, and they can also measure women's menstrual cycles. And I don't know. I don't think they're actually going to go.
Dystopia.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to go that far at first. They're going to try to warm us up before they would ever do something like that. But let me tell you, it's like they have an itch they just need to scratch, and that itch is controlling women and what they do with their own bodies.
Handmaid still? That's what they want, right? Yeah.
And are we worried about the Chinese or something spying on us when yet it's our own government?
God.
I'd argue that the Patriot Act, everyone was for the Patriot Act back when 9/11 happened because that made it so we could kind of flag people who were searching weird stuff on the internet. And then people are like, now the government's in my phone, the liberals, the Chinese, the communists, they're in my phone. It's like you literally, those people who were arguing about that literally were for it at the time. And it's just mind boggling. Yeah. So our own government is kind of spying on us. And,
well, I will say that I don't think that the Patriot Act was very clearly defined to the public when people support it. Because people were like, yeah, let's get the terrorists. But the majority of people don't think more than just like the headline or think past it. And then two, it wasn't really told to the public or relayed afterward until it was kind of exposed that they were doing all this information, spying on everyone.
That's true.
So I feel like people were deceived, rather.
So, little story, government sucks.
Yeah, government does suck. Yeah.
Well, and now, I forget the exact details of the story, but I heard someone got fired because they didn't allow Elon Musk access to, information, personal information of Americans.
The Treasury Department. Yeah, they got fired, and then recently they're slowly starting to restrict most of it from Elon in the Treasury, like the Treasury Department, which Elon shouldn't have had access to at all, but he had complete access to all U.S. Transfers of funds and everything. it was unfettered access.
AP News, Democrats ask for an investigation into Doge's access to Treasury payment systems. Democratic lawmakers are seeking a Treasury Department investigation of the access that Elon Musk's team was given to the government's payment system, citing threats to the economy, national security, and the potential violation of laws protecting Americans' privacy and tax data. Gee, why did they even want that?
Well,
To control, maybe? I don't know.
well, there's the control, being able to transfer some of those funds, know what to cut, transfer some of those funds to his flunkies. Another thing that it could be is they can know what revenue routes are going to foreign entities or foreign intelligence
Of personal
agencies.
people? Of just individuals?
Well, it kind of gets conspiratorial because it could be getting that information that we are sending money to like a foreign spy, like a
Yeah. I see that.
yeah. So it could be some of that. I don't know, but the thought frightens me
Yeah.
for sure.
And that, honestly, like, if they just start transferring people's personal money or they're just like, there's a tax now, and then they just start taking it, I could totally see them just streamlining the process and being like, we're just going to take it directly from your check, or we're going to mess with your payment information, and we're going to know
Right.
exactly every single cent you're making. When it's like, honestly, funding for the IRS, that's kind of what they made it out to be, is the boogeyman of they're going after just normal people, and when really they would go after tax cheats, whereas Elon's here, and now he actually has access to individuals'
He has the cheat
information.
codes. He has the entire system.
It's like, I would trust the entire department of the IRS, who probably have a lot of people in it who can actually make some sane decisions, versus fucking Elon Musk. It's like some really crazy dude who did the Nazi salute, like, brazenly. It's like, come on now.
Some tech billionaire who is every single thing that he's ever done has just been conning
Yeah.
people,
Or
like,
handed to him.
or handed to him. Like, he bought Tesla, he ruined it. He took over it, threw the CEOs out, and said that he made it and he owned it.
He went through some weird like lawsuit
Yeah.
or whatever to make it so he was legally the founder.
The founder, right? Yeah.
Who does that?
Of
So
Tesla?
weird.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I still see people driving Teslas, and I'm like, I probably bought it before, but when I see a dumb-looking Cybertruck, I'm like, bro, what the...
Well, I mean, there's no excuse for the Cybertruck.
It's just ugly.
But the other cars, I might be able to go I hope you bought that before all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What else did I want to go with?
Well, I also heard something that a lot of like Elon's like, I'm gonna say cronies, but the people who
Yeah.
are like working with him specifically in this weird treasury coup or whatever. I heard somewhere that they're like
18 to 24.
exactly 18 to 24.
Yeah.
It's like
That's the main age?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like
dang.
take those stereotypical like incels. They're working for him, which I find kind of funny.
I'm 25. Like, I'm 1 year older than them.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be qualified to be in there. Like, what?
Exactly.
Uh,
I'm not qualified, and I'm only 18.
And they probably want them. They probably want them to be young like that, so that they can continually work in there past Trump. and
Exactly.
And that's what they want to do to the Supreme Court too, because now he might be getting 2 more justices. Well, honestly, it won't necessarily. It'll be replacing other conservatives likely, but like, even still, like, he'll put more conservative people.
There's no law against packing the courts. We need to pack the fucking courts. Sorry. Like,
Valid.
we need to put equal representation. I think there should be equal representation from parties throughout all time inside of the Supreme Court with how much power they have.
Oh, that's
That's
so much power.
ridiculous that it's not equal.
It's just the only argument I've ever really heard that makes somewhat of sense is what Biden actually said against why he didn't pack the court, is just, like, for example, if he could put, I don't know, 3 more liberal justices on there, what's stopping a Republican president from doing the same thing? Equal representation, that's actually an interesting thing I hadn't thought about, is if it was like, because right now this is the problem. We don't have liberal and conservative justices. We have liberal and Republican justices. There's very little disconnect.
Yeah.
So
And even like some of the liberal ones are more middle the road, which I feel like the term liberal has just slowly shifted into the middle.
Especially in America.
In time, and I'm like, I don't even consider myself a liberal anymore because I think I'm more left than that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to also talk about, I'm surprised we've kind of hit on the edge lines of it, but President Trump imposes tariffs on Mexico, China, and Canada. The ones that I find very interesting is just Canada and Mexico, though. It says President Donald Trump signed the tariffs, and the tariffs are part of his strategy to address trade imbalances and protect American industries. The move has prompted discussions about potential economic impacts and international relations. This is from The Guardian. And it was very sad because I was watching this press conference that Justin Trudeau, then I think it was a few other members like higher in government, and he did a really good speech talking about how they're doing counter tariffs to America, Canada is, and how all throughout history Canada has been at our side. Like even in 9/11, like they were taking in like random passengers. They fought in wars with us. They have always been a great partner with NAFTA, the North American Trade Alliance. It's like, or however, whatever the acronym.
I don't understand why he's going after Canada.
Exactly, and he even said, Trudeau in the speech, he was like, yeah, like less than 1% of fentanyl is coming from our border. Like guns is like not coming through. Like literally there's no reason for Trump to do that. And I think the tariffs actually, it was a little bit different from what was even outlined in 2020 in Project 2025. So he was just randomly fucking tariffing just Canada, Mexico, literally our closest neighbors before he even does some other places. Like,
I don't know if it's like he's trying to isolate us or if he's like trying to prepare for a takeover of Canada, which would be fucking stupid.
Well,
because
it could be.
He did say, I don't know if you guys heard about the Palestine thing. He was like, yeah, let's just take it over.
Make it a state.
We'll own it. It's great property. It'd be beautiful if it weren't for those people. Oh, those pesky people. Like, come on.
If we go in to take any country, I'm going to get drafted and I'm going to sabotage the hell out of it. We're like, I know that's dark and very immoral, but it's like,
no. I mean,
I don't care.
What I've always said is that peaceful protesting doesn't work alone. You need some aspect of sabotage or vandalization for anyone to listen. Something that causes their pockets to hurt, or something that causes interruptions to their lives. That's it.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me in the aftermath of the American and Spanish War, because they ended up fighting over, I think it was like Cuba and all this kind of stuff. And then
Cuba, Florida, I think the Philippines too, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is when they actually did the Philippines, there was a black soldier who ended up seeing everything that was the terrible, just horrific crimes against humanity they were committing against the Filipinos. And he created like a counterforce, and he actually did wreak havoc on the actual U.S. military there, and he helped them. So it's like stuff like that has happened all throughout history. It's just a question of if it's going to happen now. And I think that actually is a good point. That makes me think like he wants Palestine to be a state. He wants Mexico to be a state. Well, actually, he hasn't said that directly.
He wants Greenland and Canada.
Yeah, Greenland and Canada. Maybe that's his thing. It's like, oh, we're going to have you suffer economically. And that honestly, because America is such a big country and more populated than Canada, Canada probably will suffer to some extent, but Trump is expecting them to go on their knees, or at least is what he's hoping. They get on their knees and they crawl over and they say, okay, we need to trade with you guys. And he says, okay, become the 51st state. And they say, okay, that's literally in his 4-year-old mind.
Most of the stuff that's in the Geneva Convention is because of Canada. I do not want to fight them. Ever.
Oh, yeah.
They're scary.
Justin Trudeau, I know you're hot. But that's actually what I was thinking. You know how old Justin Trudeau's wife is? I think she was like his teacher or something. And then he got with her.
Damn. Impressive.
Yep. Into them MILFs, huh? First time the word MILFs has been said on WSU Democrats podcast.
Let's go.
The first time?
I think the first time. I don't think anyone else has ever said that on you. But yeah.
Man, I love frogs.
Oh, yeah.
I prefer fish, but that's just me.
What is that?
I don't know. It's just
Or
frogs start with
what
F,
do you
fish
mean?
starts with F.
Man, I love frogs. MILF.
Oh, okay.
Acronyms.
Yeah.
I was like, is frogs like code for something? Or I was like, yeah, I get it.
No. Yes, it's code for French.
All right. I mean, y'all have anything else to add before we wrap it up? Because I think basically everything I had. So.
No.
No, I think I'm good. It's so weird just seeing how history is starting to repeat itself and knowing that my own country is probably going to be on the wrong side of it and how I don't know how to try to fight that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Get your passports now.
I've already got one. I'm fine.
well, it's hard because that's the dilemma, right? It's like, do you want to try to leave this country or do you want to stay and fight? And honestly,
I want to have the option.
yeah.
I don't want to be stuck here being forced into the concentration camps. Because
Yeah, once it gets to that point, like that's a little different. But I think the most patriotic thing to do is to literally resist and fight back.
sure,
Although,
all I can.
Yeah, while you can. And I think there's been a debate going around because resist was the motto in like 2016 and all that. Whereas now I think where they say opposition, and by opposition they mean, and I don't mean this as in like a coup or they try to act like they are, but you basically have a shadow government where you have some kind of leader who you kind of look up to, kind of like the president. You have a bunch of other liberals and other people who you kind of look to like they're have some kind of power in government, for then eventually when you do have the elections, you elect a bunch of them in, but you already had that in your mind. Because it's really hard psychologically even when you're thinking like, dang, like the president isn't a Democrat. The Senate, like the majority aren't Democrats. It's like,
Yeah, it
who
is a
am I-
psychological beatdown for
like,
sure.
who are you going to think of someone's fighting for me, the ones that are in the minority? So that's why it's important to actually have some kind of opposition where you actually have a counterforce who you kind of look to. And that also is powerful because you can ascribe hope onto that.
Yeah.
That's how Obama won after 8 years of George Bush. It's like you saw these terrible things. And then honestly, that's also why Obama got like 5 million less votes in 2012 is because they had this idea of hope and then it was shattered because they had bad expectations. But for the short term, I think we could definitely use that.
Even still, whenever I think of a president in my head, I always go to Obama. He is the perfect picture of a president, and I want to go back. I want to go back.
Me too.
I mean, yes. I mean, the only thing, I'm more left-leaning than him in some ways.
Well,
and-
sure, so am I, but like, he's a sane president, and like I mean, it when I picture a president in my mind, like somebody who's dignified, responsible, caring, I think of that. Yeah,
Definitely. And his town halls and everything, he is a masterclass at rhetoric, all of that. But yeah, I mean, if that's all we got for today, then hope everyone watching has a nice day or night. Thanks so much for tuning in to the WSU Democrats podcast. See you later.
have a good one.
Bye-bye.